Excellency, Grace, Archbishop Stephen Julien, the Mayor of Port of Spain, Councillor Karen Valentine, Queen Mother, other archbishops and elders, members of the clergy of the Spiritual Shout Baptist faith, followers of the faith, all other invited guests, including members of the cabinet, members of parliament, visitors to the official location of state gatherings here at the Diplomatic Center, members of the media, welcome. Welcome to the location where the state entertains its citizens. For me, it is indeed a tremendous honor to host you here this evening, and a pleasure to have invited you and to see so many of you accepting the invitation to come and have dinner together. And that togetherness, I've heard it said tonight, if we can meet like this for dinner, why can't we stay like this together? I have every confidence that we will. Because progress sometimes can be measured in numbers, sometimes can be measured just in feelings. And I must tell you a little story. I grew up in Tobago, in Mason Hall in Tobago. And in Mason Hall, there was a Methodist church into which I was baptized. There was an Adventist church in which I grew up. There was a Catholic church in which I had a lot of friends. There was an Anglican church in which a large part of my family worshipped. And we went to the Mason Hall Government Primary School, which I'm told was the first state school either in the country or in Tobago, I think it was. And there was some resistance to the building of that school by members of the clergy. The ecclesiastical bodies didn't want the government to get involved in education. Strange enough, we've come a long way from that, where everybody now wants the government to even write the exam for you. But in those days, education was the forte and the province of the churches. So government schools were not part of the landscape, and Mason Hall government was an unusual place. But to appease those who objected to the state's involvement in education, the authorities allowed the religious bodies, the religions, to come into the school every morning and conduct with their flock catechism, worship for about 15 or 20 minutes. So I grew up in a school where that happened. But interestingly enough, as I got into public life and had to pay attention to what was going on around me, every year this time, especially since the holiday has been declared, we reminisce and we go back to the time when your faith could find no acceptance and no place. And in fact, under law, you were prosecuted and socially persecuted for holding on to this faith. And I remember in that primary school, when these services were going on in the morning, there were two families in the village that were Baptists. And those children had to step aside and go and sit in one corner of the school while the rest of the school conducted this exercise. And I distinctly recall feeling that they were different. And as a child, somehow feeling that they were inferior, because they were identified by the way they worshipped. And there were times, I didn't know what time of year it was, but there were times when these children would be by the wayside, standing with their parents, singing and preaching and clapping and ringing a bell, and they were different. And they certainly were discriminated against. Our country has come a long way from that, where it was acceptable practice to separate and discriminate on the basis of how you worship. And for that alone, we could say that Trinidad and Tobago has made a lot of progress in my lifetime. And progress doesn't stop. Oppression never lasts forever. Today we can look back on this historical development. But I could say I lived it because I remember those children, and I could imagine how they felt, being separated, being identified, and even being ignored. And I always felt, was there something that I could have done? Is there something that I can do? Well, today, what can I do but invite you all, spiritual Shouter Baptist practitioners, into the space where every other person in this country recognizes as the space where every creed and race finds an equal place. I'm particularly happy to see the women dressed up again a few days of the year. I look forward to this time of year, to seeing our women dressed up the way you dressed up tonight. And I always wonder, how come you don't do this more often? Because while the men look so drab as we do, the women look so delightful. And it's a pleasure, taking part in the ceremonies, because it's uplifting. It really is uplifting. Singing the spirituals, acknowledging the superior being, and feeling as though we are all one brotherhood, one sisterhood. And I don't know why every time in Spiritual Baptist Celebration Day, every year there has to be a conversation about who gave who what, and who didn't give who what, and who didn't give who what. And I was in Tobago this year, so I couldn't join you here as I normally would do. And then I read the papers the following day, and I saw that I was being accused of not going to somebody's function in Trinidad. And then I read the papers a little further on, and I saw it being said that I didn't go to the function because somebody said that you, the Spiritual Baptists, were in an abusive relationship with the PNM. And I said, it's a good thing I didn't go. Because I am encouraging women that if you are in an abusive relationship, then for God's sake, get out of it. Don't encourage it. So that kind of thing is not going to last forever. The same way we move from separating those children to you being embraced by your national community, and today you are in fact a star in the crown of Trinidad and Tobago. It's the same way with the rolling of time. All that kind of non-contributory talk will die, and maybe our children and our grandchildren will look back at this time as part of our history, even though it's currently our present. So tonight, I welcome you to this center, and whether it is the first, it most certainly will not be the last. Welcome and have a good evening.